I'm John Hall. Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. Last week I told you about feeling crispy from working on a book, and this week the work continues, but it's a little more fun. I took a drive to Asheville, North Carolina to help out with some photography for the upcoming book, and I also used the trip as an excuse to stop by a few breweries for a socially distanced beer and to have a chat with brewers in person. And today, I'm talking with Jonathan Parks. He's the brewer and co-owner of Zillicoah Brewing. And we're all over the place on this one, and I'll tell you more in a moment. But first, an invitation to check out beeredge.com for articles, episodes, and to sign up for our newsletter. Also, check out the This Week in Rauch Beer group on Facebook, and we're also on social media on Twitter and Instagram at TWRauchBeer. This episode, and all the work that we're doing here at Beer Edge, is made possible through support from our sponsors, and I hope you'll give them a closer look. Briess has been malting barley for 145 years, and the fifth generation of family ownership is currently leading the company. But the values have always remained the same, producing the highest quality, most consistent malt, and working directly with their customers to help them succeed. From pilsners to porters and everything in between, Briess offers the finest handcrafted malts, extracts, and adjuncts to help you brew the perfect beer. Visit Briess.com or visit their social media channels to see and to learn more. At Athletic Brewing Company, their innovative process allows them to brew great tasting craft beer without the alcohol. From IPAs to stouts to golden ales and more, they offer a full selection of beers starting at only 50 calories. Now you can keep your head clear and enjoy the refreshing taste of beer anytime, anywhere. Place an order today at athleticbrewing.com and get free shipping on 2 6-packs or more. And we're brought to you by NZ Hops. In a little country far down in the Pacific, you'll find a cooperative of master growers whose legend and cultivars have been crafted for over 150 years with creativity and passion to produce some of the world's finest hops. This is NZ Hops. The industry originated in 1843, not long after the early settlers arrived from England. Years of partnership with dedicated hop breeding program and farming knowledge handed down through the generations sees the current-day master growers proudly providing 18 unique New Zealand hop varieties to the world. Visit nzhops.co.nz or find them on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at nzhops Ltd. It felt good to be back in the world again, even masked up and socially distanced. And before embarking to Asheville, I put out to social media the one question: where should I stop by in Asheville to have a beer? I hadn't visited since 2017, and a lot had changed in the city. And Zillicoah kept coming up time and time again. They first opened just after I last visited the city, but the founders come from strong brewing and homebrewing backgrounds and brought a lot to the beer-savvy area, especially with the sour program and a love of lagers. They had, by the way, a wonderful smoked dunkel on tap that I enjoyed. John Parks is the brewer and co-owner and co-founder of Zillicoah and was gracious to spend some time with me between brewing and mashing out. We sat on the windswept patio of the brewery shortly before it opened to the public. From recipes to processes, COVID, and creating, we get into it all. Here's our conversation. I haven't been to many breweries in the last year. In fact, I've been to, I think, maybe 2 before this, maybe 3, all curbside, all anything. It feels weird to be sitting at a brewery right now, even outside, drinking this delicious Rauch beer. My consumer perspective has changed considerably in the last year. And I'm wondering from a brewer perspective, what's changed for you?
Well, I think when it first happened, we were kind of forced into doing things that there were a lot of options.
Okay.
There was a lot of thinking about doing things we didn't want to do in the past. And we always knew we wanted to do bottles of our lager. We wanted to do bottle conditioned, little stubby 12-ounce bottles.
Okay. Like the red stripe bottles, like the full sale sessions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the appeal of that, just before we get into...
Oh, man. I mean, those...
I need you to talk into the mic. That's the only problem with radio.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Those bottles in your hand, it's impossible not to crush them.
Yeah.
There's a nostalgic feel to them.
Yeah.
They're unique. they look incredible in a cooler.
Yeah.
I think they're just beautiful little bottles. I really like the package.
Okay.
But yeah,
and even bottles in a aluminum age.
Yeah, so we actually just did our first canning run on Tuesday.
Okay.
So
did that feel weird? Did that feel good? What's
little weird? We did our we did a can conditioned Keller pills, which I think we're going to keep doing at least in the summertime, just because they're a little bit more portable. I've always preferred glass. If I'm at home, I want a glass bottle.
Is it the easy drinkability? Is it the romanticism? Is it the
for the bottles?
Yeah.
No, I don't. It's hard to put into words. I think there's a nostalgic feel to them. A can just feels a little bit cheapened. They have their place. I mean, I love. I fish a lot and outdoors a lot, and so cans definitely are important. But I always go to the bottle.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just like bottles. A personal preference kind of thing. And the stubby,
pretty much.
The stubby bottles do sort of bring a fun smile to your eye kind of thing. It's
Yeah, I mean a hoppy little Pilsner in one of those bottles is just like, it's incredible.
So it's something that you wanted to do. And
we wanted to
COVID kind of forced you.
It did. It kind of pushed it along, made it happen a lot faster than we were anticipating. So we ended up using the equipment that we had for our mixed culture stuff.
Okay.
So that kind of launched that, and then going into survival mode in a brewery that makes mixed culture beer is pretty weird, because you don't know if you're going to be open in 6 months or a year.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to look forward. I mean, when you're brewing those kind of beers, you're thinking 6 months, a year, or 2 years ahead.
Right.
And if you don't
early 2019, you weren't like, the world's going to be full of zombies.
Yeah. You have to have hope to make sour beer,
Right.
Pretty much.
Really?
So, I mean, that's how I feel. That's how it felt.
You've opened up like 9 veins of conversation that I want to follow, but hope for sour beer or being hopeful while making it just appeals to me on some level, because, and I've had this conversation, I don't know with how many brewers, and I'm sure the listeners are sort of exhausted from me asking this question, but like, when it comes to a mixed culture program, a sour program, things that are in wood, I'm always curious to hear from a brewer's perspective when they feel like something is done, because there is no timetable. There is no.
No, there's not. I think that's the beautiful thing about those beers. I mean, that's what I really enjoy about making them, is that you kind of surrender to what the beer is going to do. It tells you what to do and when to do it, and what's right and what's not right. And we've had beers that have gone, they were singing, and we couldn't get to them in time, and they ended up getting dumped.
In the span of how long?
Through COVID, it was probably a span of like 8 months.
Okay, so things at the 8-month mark, like January of 2020, by the time August came around, like you just weren't happy with them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Shit.
It's only happened a couple times, but
okay.
And there were more experimental things that we were trying, but yeah, I mean that's what I really love about making those kind of beers.
You discovered them as a home brewer.
Yeah.
What were the beers that inspired you when you were home brewing to try mixed culture?
Oh man, Cantillon.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Jolly Pumpkin.
Okay.
Just
the classics.
The classics for sure. Definitely Bob Sylvester.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one big
He's
reason.
He's local-ish now.
He is.
Yeah.
He is. He's up here now. That's probably why we have an open fermentation room. I was obsessed with his beers. And it was like I would get a bottle and it was a 50-50 shot whether I liked it or not.
I've seen somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, but there was something about those ones that were, when they hit, man, there's nothing like it. And it's...
I know these things are hard to explain, and I don't want you to be, you can be vague if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
What does hit mean for you?
Just balance, unity. All the pieces working together. Nothing's sticking out that is just really, really off. I mean, when a mixed culture beer is not good, it's off.
Right, but you're a brewer saying that, and I'm always surprised when, and I'm painting with a broad brush right now, but I'm always surprised when I go to, or used to go to, breweries that had a quote-unquote sour program, and I was like, this is battery acid, or this is so out of whack. But then I'm watching, quote-unquote beer nerds line up and be like, oh my God, this dude, and there's this disconnect between what a subsect of consumers want versus what brewers hope to make versus the brewers who are really thinking about and committed to and understanding when something is it has turned and you have to dump it.
Yeah. I think the disconnect is just experience. I think that brewers, obviously, we drink a lot of different beer.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could say the same for a lot of different styles. I think that there's a lot of breweries that make beers that at the end of their shift, the brewers probably don't want to drink.
I mean, mixed culture saisons are probably not, mixed culture anything is not after.
I'm thinking, in my head, I'm thinking like, a quadruple IPA with lactose in it. That's probably not what you want in July at the end of your shift.
No.
But there's a line, 2 blocks down the street lining up for them. But I think that, drinkers in general go through a cycle to where you get, it's funny too, like a lot of breweries they'll make like a golden ale or like a Kolsch, and they work pretty well. And their target is usually the Busch Light drinker.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, I've kind of found that Busch Light drinker will go to the most extreme IPA or the most extreme sour thing, and then eventually come back around and find balance.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what's happening with lager becoming more popular.
In the craft set. Lager has never not been popular.
Right.
But
in a small brewery like this, but I think that's a part of it, is that people they've been drinking craft beer long enough to know what's balanced and what's just like absurd.
I was talking to Mike from Zebulon recently, and we were talking about the same thing of like, coming back around and this sort of need or desire to drink what your father or your grandfather or, like your ancestors drank. And what I found really interesting was, and this was after we had recorded, we were talking about how this next generation that comes up, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale is going to be their dad's beer. It's not going to be Hams. It's not going to be Busch Light. It's going to be Sierra Pale or, like something that has, hops or flavor to it. And so there's a little bit of hope for, the quadruple IPA lactose drinkers that like, oh yeah, that familiar old green label, like that's tasting pretty good right now.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about developing a recipe, who are you brewing for?
So it's typically like 1 for you, 2 for us.
Okay.
It depends how we feel at the time.
Okay.
We make most of the IPAs that we brew. We've got 2 on right now. Those are for you.
Okay.
Although I will have one when I get off my shift.
Sure.
I still enjoy them. I don't get super excited about brewing IPA. It's a lot of fun, but that's typically how we look at it. Like we didn't brew that Rauchbach for the masses. We know when beers are going to
I know who you brewed it for. You brewed it for the This Week in Rauch Beer community. Yeah. They're loyal.
We have another smoked beer in tank. We actually have a series that we're doing with Epiphany Malt, to where we have them. And we actually went over there for the first smoking of the malt. We're doing a really lightly smoked malt, and we're using 100% of that as our base. Nice. And we're using different woods in North Carolina for these beers, and they've turned out really beautifully. Being from Miami, coming up here, we used to come up here and camp and stuff in the summertime, and like these mountains always smelled like, far off hickory smoke or far off, a barbecue pit far off.
Ham water.
It's awesome. And every time I smell it, it's usually like in spring, fall through spring. It's got this like faint smoke smell up in these mountains, and that series of beers is kind of like an ode to that, to this area.
I miss doing the show in person because I get to see facial expressions, and you have this. It's not impish, it's not mischievous, but it's this wistful kind of thing. And when you're out watching the smoking of the malts, there's got to be something like as a brewer that keeps you interested, because otherwise, like, you're just going to become, a bitter husk of a guy who is, mashing in to make whatever, just to make the paychecks, just to make the, just kind of keep going. When you can have projects to look forward to, like, that's got to drive the creative spirit, right?
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
just sort of seeing that on your face. Like,
yeah,
that's
absolutely. I mean, we're really lucky that we were able to, we're a brewery owned by brewers, and that's pretty rare. That we're able to do that, and doing it in a town like Asheville, we knew we had the audience to be able to make the beers that we wanted, and we just hoped that people would feel the same way.
Yeah.
So we haven't really had to, make the beers to keep the lights on, very much. I mean, we haven't really, we've been able to just brew what we love to brew, and just constantly trying to get better.
More with John in a moment, but first, a word from the companies and organizations that help support this work. Please give them a closer look. Briess is the original craft maltster and currently offers the broadest product line in the industry. Briess barley is grown in the Bighorn Basin of Wyoming and Montana, where warm days, cool nights, and floodwater irrigation yield some of the highest quality barley in the U.S. At Athletic Brewing Company, their innovative process allows them to brew great-tasting craft beer without the alcohol. Place an order today at athleticbrewing.com and get free shipping on 2 6-packs or more. And NZ Hops, a cooperative of master growers whose legend and cultivars have been crafted for over 150 years to produce some of the world's finest hops. NZ Hops are like no others, unique in their flavors and aromas. Visit nzhops.co.nz to explore more. And now, back to a windy patio along the French Broad River and Jonathan Parks of Zillicoah Brewing. Going back to COVID at the beginning, there is a lot of focus on people either drinking their cellars or stocking up on, and I think the cellar talk game was just that, because I tried it for a week and I was like, this is miserable. Like, this is not fun, drinking imperial stouts from 2015 just because I'm locked inside of my house right now. Like, I want Sierra Pale or Bell's Two Hearted, or and we saw a run, especially in the bigger packs of things like that. Did you see a shift, and do you think that that's going to have a long-term effect on mixed culture or some of the more esoteric beers that you're making, the way that consumers have been drinking for this last year?
I think the biggest thing is probably that's going to stick around, I think, is the direct-to-consumer.
Mm-hmm.
That was really big for us for a while. It was like we looked like an Amazon warehouse here for a while. We were packaging and shipping off a lot of beer.
Yeah.
But that fell off. We still do here and there, but it's not cases every day.
Okay.
Like it was. But yeah, I think that's an interesting route. I think it's gonna stick around. I think it's gonna change the way that people get sour beer, which they don't really sell that well, honestly.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm wondering if as the wind kicks up here, but I'm wondering if when you look at the last year, if it's like, well, we love making them, but the bottom line is, it's difficult, especially like when you have to plan
it is
so far out.
It is definitely difficult. But we run a very bare bones. I mean, there's 3 of us that are on salary.
Okay.
And we've really scrapped a lot of stuff together here. We started without a brew house. So we didn't go into insane debt right off the bat. And so that kind of allowed us to be able to take time and to make beers that we want to make, and for the long play, and not just for what's gonna sell tomorrow.
Is it hard to, Or is it easy, I guess, to sort of keep that philosophy going the longer that you've been doing this now for the last couple of years?
Yeah, definitely.
Easier or harder?
I think it's easier. Just and that's another thing that COVID did was like it reassured us that we need to just follow our gut and just keep doing what we're doing. Because it was very tempting to just put everything into cans.
Yeah.
We knew we wanted those little bottles and we wanted them bottle conditioned. And it didn't make money sense even in the middle of a pandemic, but it's what we wanted to do. And we knew that at some point, we hoped at some point the pandemic would be over. And
we're working towards it.
Yeah. We're getting there, but yeah, we hope that, in the end that we would have the product that we wanted, and we wanted to be proud of what we were doing. And that's the most important thing, I think, to keep that up. I mean, at least psychologically, because then what's the point? It's just to make money. There's easier ways to make money. That's not why we're here.
Less sweaty ways.
Yeah.
I should point out, like, you've been brewing all day. You came out, like, soaked in your Carhartts and, your boots to sit down, and I appreciate you taking the time. In a crowded town like Asheville, and I'm not asking you to name names or anything like that, but pride is something that I think in the early days there were a committed bunch that laid the bedrock for what came after, and then there was folks who got into it just for the money or fame or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you see pride when you look around, or?
I mean, it's hard to look at a brewery in the face sometimes because you have it's like a 7-headed dragon.
Yeah.
You don't know what's the real thing that you're looking at. There's there's not many breweries that are owned by the brewer or owned by the people that you see every day. A lot of times it's a money person, and then they get a head brewer who's a talking head.
Sure.
But I mean, brewers are proud. They should be. I guess, does that make sense?
It does.
There's a really tight-knit community here, especially when I first started brewing. I mean, it was a lot smaller, and everybody helped everybody out. We still do, but there's a little bit of elbow bumping.
Sure.
There's only so much room at the table, and you can kind of feel that a little bit sometimes. But we don't really get affected by it because we're so damn small. I mean, we don't.
You've mentioned size a couple of times, just for listener edification. Like, score it for me here. Like,
how many barrels we do a year? About 600.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably do about 800 this year.
We're recording this on your outside patio between 2 train tracks and a river, and some metal work that's happening outside as well as the wind's coming off. But it's also now 2:00 Eastern, and you guys have just opened for business, and all of the Ubers are now pulling up with all of the nerds, which is fun. So those are the committed guys who are here, like when you open up.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of? I haven't been in Asheville in this area since January of 17. When the beer tourists come through, where are you on their roster?
So that's kind of the beautiful thing about where we are, is that we're about a mile from downtown.
Yeah.
But you have to try to find us.
Yeah.
We've got a tiny little.
I got nervous
there.
crossing the railroad tracks. I was like, I've been at crime scenes like this before.
Yeah. So if you're here, you wanted to be here.
But are you the first brewery of the day, and then people work their way downtown, or are people downtown and then they get recommendations and they like?
It's usually that. It's usually the recommendations downtown.
Okay.
We get that a lot.
Like, oh, you've been drinking this shit downtown. Come on, go get a good pint.
Yeah, and it feels really good. We have a bartender downtown telling people to come to your brewery. Mm-hmm. It's pretty great.
Is there a? But then there's a pressure that comes with that. If somebody takes the the Uber ride a mile outside of downtown and they've spent whatever.
Yeah, but that's...
You don't care?
No, there's way more important pressures.
What's the most important pressure on you right now?
Oh, being a dad.
Well, sure.
You know, that's number one.
Yeah.
I just got a puppy, so being a puppy training
man,
dad.
That's a thing. It is.
Yeah.
Well, I have a 4-year-old and a 13-year-old dog, and it's...
Yeah. So, but letting down tourists that come over here because they don't like our beer is not on the top of my list.
You're not losing sleep at the end of the night?
Not too much, no.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I hope they love it, but, not everything's for everybody.
You brought up family. There's generations of the very early generations of brewers, and then maybe even the ones through like the 80s and 90s who started this, who saw the Anheuser-Busch family, which is a terrible example to base your family off of. But there's this whole thing of dynasties, and this is a business to pass down. Mm-hmm. Is that something that I don't know how old your kids are, but like it's...
Yeah, they're 6 and 9.
Okay.
And if they wanted to, I would love that, because I love where I'm at.
Yeah.
I love my life. I get to come in here and play with beer all day.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But if they find joy in that like I do, then absolutely. There's no pressure to do that at all. Yeah. I mean, I'll be dead and gone, so as long as they're happy doing what they're wanting to do, and they find a creative outlet like I've been able to, then that's all that matters, I think.
The creative outlet is so important in this arena, and I think business sort of takes over, and I love that this is a brewery owned by brewers, and you're looking for creativity, and you're trying to put stuff out. What inspires you, and then how do you translate that into your beers?
All sorts of things.
Okay.
Whether it's tasting a beer or thinking about a beer I had in the past, or reading about some old tradition that sounds interesting but also maybe kind of gross.
Is there an example of some
stuff? I mean, some of the old Goza stuff, the way that those bottles sealed up with just the way that they did that sounds kind of nasty, but also interesting. Through historical stuff, but also a lot of just it's mostly just what I want to drink at the end of the day. Because I think if you get too far into other stuff, then you're just getting lost. It's fun to go in other directions, or to play a spin on something, or riff on something, or use, think blood orange, and then you want to go with that, take an ingredient and go with this, or I want to use this botanical and go that direction. And that does happen, but for the most part, they start with, what do I want to drink right now?
Yeah. But there's a couple of different kinds of drinkers where people want, I want 2 or 3 and of the same thing, or there's the people who, I'm going to open up a 14% barley wine once a night, and so there's different kinds of drinkers.
Absolutely, and I'm all over the place. I mean, I love a huge stout every once in a while. When it's cold out, it's like there's nothing better. Same thing with that Rock Bock there.
It's a lot of fun to drink.
So through the winter, that's an incredible thing to drink on. And then as this, as the temperature rises, a little 4% Pilsner, 40 IBUs. I keep, every time the wind is showing up in the mics, and hopefully people are sticking with us through this. We have windscreens on, but there's sort of, I guess, is that a hill or a mountain? There's some sort of foliage. We're in a valley. This is the windiest spot in all of Asheville.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that I decided to set up the mics exactly in the windiest place.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about open fermentation, whatever is coming through right now, you're fine. It does, it's just gonna, it's just gonna happen. Have you noticed in the last couple of years, when you're doing open fermentation, is there a flavor Is there an aroma? Is there something that is on the wind that is getting into your beers?
On the wind?
Oh, sure.
As far as no, so we have a HEPA filtration system.
Oh, okay.
With positive pressure in that room. We were about to just spray mixed culture stuff all over the place.
All over the walls, yeah.
Then we kind of stopped. We're like, well, we might want to put our lagers in here at some point. Let's not just do that quite yet. But now it's like we probably do half of our lagers in the open fermenter.
And it doesn't.
So as far as like flavor contribution, it's hard to put your finger on.
Okay.
I would say that it's a little bit more cohesive. There's a little bit more of like an ester production. You get more. It seems like there's more yeast character to it, and it's worked better with some yeasts than others.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really hard to pick out one thing. It's just kind of an overall feel, and it's also, I haven't done any kind of blind taste testings or anything like that.
But what are you feeling though when you're saying it's an overall feel?
Of just more smooth, but also more like more soft and yeast focused.
Okay, it's not at all helpful.
Yeah,
like it's like. I'm trying to find a graceful way out of it, but I'm like, it just sounds like marketing. But
yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
it is. It's hard. It's hard to put my finger. It's very subtle. I mean, it's not like they're coming out of there and being like, "Whoa,
yeah,
that's different." But I feel like I can taste it more in our Helles.
Okay.
Because there's not much.
There's not much to hide
behind there.
Yeah.
And it just comes off as a little bit more yeast driven.
Okay.
I know that's not a descriptor, but
no, but that's but your beer is better than anybody.
Yeah.
So
it just comes off as. So here's a good example. Instead of like a little bit of like bread crust in our Helles, it seems a little bit more like par baked white bread.
Okay.
A yeast roll and not like a brown crust of the outside.
Okay.
The inside of the bread, not the outside of the bread.
And that's I mean, that's obviously appealing, and
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you think about that, you were talking about working with local maltsters before. Mm-hmm. Are you trying to, the more you learn about what this area is providing with your open fermenters and with the beers that you're making, are you starting to think about the malt that you want to start sourcing that you think can complement that, accent that, whatever?
For the open fermentation specifically?
Or just in general, I guess, but
well,
I was using open fermentation as a...
Yeah, so we've been using the 6-row Pilsner from Riverbend for a while.
Okay.
It's very, very grassy.
Yeah, it's fun.
And
that's in the Helles, right?
That's not in the Helles.
Okay.
No, that's in the all of our mixed culture stuff is pretty much Riverbend or Epiphany.
Okay.
And our lagers, we do use North Carolina malt in a handful of them, but for the most part, we're using German malts. If we're doing something that's just a straight Helles, we'll use German malts.
Okay.
For the most part, but we do all North Carolina stuff. I have a weird thing too where I don't like to mix. I don't like using a little bit of North Carolina and a little bit of Germany. I don't know why, but I just can't bring myself to do it. So it's we either go all in North Carolina or we go traditional European malt.
That's just
it makes no sense.
Okay.
It doesn't.
It's
feel,
like
it just doesn't feel
Ghostbusters.
Right.
Like you don't cross the streams.
Yeah. I guess. I
mean,
feel like it's
until you do, and then
that's
and then
funny.
you put marshmallow in a beer.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about it too much, but yeah, it always feels like
I just cracked myself up with that terrible joke. Yeah.
But
you don't like it.
It feels like if we're gonna do it, we should just do it.
A year from now, and it's tough to predict, but you work in beers that are looking longer term.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you're thinking about right now that you hope can come to fruition?
Yeah, like beers that we're working on.
Yeah.
So one of the things that COVID did was, like I said, it kind of took away our at least mine thinking ahead and kind of neglected the mixed culture side a little bit. But we've been recently really jumping back into the hoppy Brett beers, which has always been a focus of ours. Like if we could do two things here, it'd be open fermented lager and hoppy Brett beer.
That's it?
Yeah, if I had to choose two, that would be it.
Okay.
Yeah. I love the combination of Brett and American hops. I think it's a really incredible combination, and it's a new,
in what way?
frontier.
Like, how do you?
Well,
how do you feel
there's
they
a bunch of
complement? Yeah.
different. There's a lot of small independent yeast companies that are banking really interesting Bretts, and then there's American hops and New Zealand hops that are just incredible, and the combinations of these things are just they're beautiful things. What Brett does to an IPA is just it's IPA 2.0. It's just a more I think it's a way more interesting thing
than what we're seeing in IPA right now.
Yeah. You could call it the polar opposite of where IPAs are getting sweeter and thicker and more syrupy, and the Brett IPAs I like to make are bone dry, funky. They've got layers.
How do you get drinkers to come along to that? Because
you set it out on the table. I mean, some people don't like it, some people love it, can't get enough.
You're just cheesing a mousetrap?
Yeah. I mean, there's no real way to convince somebody to like something other than
to just make it and put it out there.
Just keep on doing it, and hope that that it catches on.
Okay.
I believe in it, so I think it's going to catch on. I hope at least here it does. But
that's fascinating. Just because it is such a hard sell to get today's IPA drinker who's into hazy, juicy, whatever, out of that mindset into anything else that is not that.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean these IPAs though with Brett are aroma wise they're unbelievable. You could smell it across the table, across the bar.
So I mean Brett can show up in various different ways. So I guess I should ask which strain of Brett, and then also how is it presenting?
So presented in a lot of different ways. That's the beautiful thing is that there's a lot of different ways to do it, and there's a lot of different Brett strains and pitching rates and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
That you can really really nerd out with. But for the most part, we will ferment pretty hot in the open fermenter.
Okay.
With a saison strain, and we've done it a bunch of different ways too. But most recently, going warm with a saison strain in the open fermenter, and then giving it Brett right after primary fermentation, which is typically around day 3 to day 5.
Okay.
And then putting it into a stainless Latina tank, probably on hops. We also have been dry hopping in our open fermenter, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Messy.
It's
not so much.
Too messy. No. It looks cool. It's
God,
really,
I've
really
been out of
psychedelic.
I've made 2 assumptions now that I was like, oh sure. I've been out of the game for so long visiting breweries that I have no concept of what you all are doing anymore.
Yeah. Well, there's no head pressure. So
okay. Oh, that's
so you don't have that much CO2 building up
sense.
in there, which is another part of the open fermentation. It's the geometry of the tank, and it's the there's a lot of things that are different about it. But but dry hopping in that thing is incredible. It's a lot of fun.
So that's where you're pushing for the next little bit and beyond, you hope.
Yeah. So that's been really fun recently, is to finally get my get that creative side of my head working to where we're getting back into Brett and just waking up all of our cultures again, and
Have you noticed much of a change
in the cultures?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, yeah. When you go back to them, they are constantly changing.
Yeah.
Just feeding them again, and our main mixed culture I've had for probably 12 years.
Is this back to your homebrewing days?
Back to the homebrewing days, and I read something a while back, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I kind of ran with it that, and it made sense to me. Again, I don't know if it's true. I haven't really done any kind of deep diving into the science of it, but that, so what I would do is I would take my mixed culture, I'd add wood chunks to it, wood cubes, let it ferment out, pour it out, take the wood cubes, dry them out, rinse them off, and let them dry.
Okay.
for about a month, and take some more wort and add those wood cubes back to the wort. And I did that a bunch of times over and over again. And the idea, again, I don't know if this is scientifically proven or not. The idea is to force the Brett to go into a sexual reproductive sporulation,
Okay.
so that it would mutate faster.
Huh.
Because I was taking stuff from yeast banks, and I was taking stuff from dregs of bottles of stuff, and I didn't want to just take somebody else's thing.
Right.
So I wanted it to kind of mutate and become my own kind of little Frankenstein.
Yeah, I was about to say. It sounds like you're doing a Dr. Frankenstein thing.
Yeah. That's what and it worked. I mean, it definitely changed over time. I don't know if it changed more than it would have.
Yeah. But it's yours.
But it felt like mine. It felt more like mine. Whether it was or not, that's to be determined. But I was trying to make it mine.
I love it. I think that's really cool.
But that's what we use for the majority of our mixed culture beers, and even for a lot of our IPAs and stuff. Our Brett IPAs, mixed culture IPAs.
Well, I'm mindful of your time. I know you've been brewing all day, so
yeah, no, it's fine.
I'll say thanks so much for doing this. I'm curious to come back down a year from now, which I probably will, because I have a project that's going on that'll probably bring me back down here a year from now, and I hope we can sit down again and find out where you are a year later, because everything that you've been saying is so fascinating, and just this. In some ways, it sounds like this year, as stressful as it might have been, like has probably benefited you as a brewer and the brewery itself.
Yeah.
You're like, no, get the hell out of here. That's
Well, I mean, I think the old adage.
Not money wise, but yeah.
Yeah, of like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think, you find your resolve. We didn't break, and that's nice.
Yeah.
To be able to weather the storm and get through something as terrible as COVID. We're not done yet.
No, we're not. No, we're not even close.
But I'm damn happy to be where I'm at, and that we're still here and we're still open, and we still have people showing up at 3 o'clock right when we open.
No, I mean, it was a few minutes beforehand, and now there's a couple of tables that are filled, and people are eating tacos and having a good time, and that's an awesome compliment for a Thursday afternoon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we've been lucky here. We I think we're one of the few places that people can come and feel really safe, because you can, we've got 4 acres here on the river.
Yeah.
And you can really spread out. You cannot be within 20 feet of somebody if you don't want to.
I would have loved that just before COVID times.
Oh,
just
yeah.
because I don't really like people, but
yeah, it's like a park setting. That's kind of what we were going for.
Is that? I mean, it's obviously been to your benefit, but have you seen that people have flocked to you during COVID because of the space that you offer, that they might have not have been here last spring?
I think
or
so.
The spring
or
before?
I think probably, maybe not just not here, but I think they're coming here more often than they would have before, because of the open space and because of how strict we've been with the COVID guidelines. And I think we've done a pretty damn good job of keeping people safe.
I was talking to your bartender before we started recording, and she was telling me all about, just the measures that you all put in place, and it sounds like you guys have just been adamant from the beginning, and that's really important. And I wish more breweries were doing it, and so thanks for doing your part, and
of course,
getting us all back to actually being able to drink together in person. And next time I hope we can have a pint together. And thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
My thanks to John and the entire team there for the hospitality, and I hope that when you get the 2 shots and you can travel again, that the brewery is on your list. Next week on the show, it's another Asheville area recorded conversation that you won't want to miss. As always, you can reach me anytime at John Hall, that's JOHNHOLL, at beeredge.com, or on Twitter at John_Hall. And speaking of Beer Edge, you can check out beeredge.com for articles and episodes and more. And if you'd like to learn about advertising and supporting independent journalism, please contact Liz Melby. She's at liz@beeredge.com. And speaking of that, This episode is possible through the support of these fine organizations. Briess has been malting barley for 145 years, and the fifth generation of family ownership is currently leading the company. But the values have always remained the same: producing the highest quality, most consistent malt, and working directly with their customers to help them succeed. From pilsners to porters and everything in between, Briess offers the finest handcrafted malts, extracts, and adjuncts to help you brew the perfect beer. At Athletic Brewing Company, their innovative process allows them to brew great tasting craft beer without the alcohol. From IPAs to stouts to golden ales and more, they offer a full selection of beers starting at only 50 calories. Now you can keep your head clear and enjoy the refreshing taste of beer anytime, anywhere. Place an order today at athleticbrewing.com and get free shipping on 2 6-packs or more. And we're brought to you by NZ Hops. In a little country far down in the Pacific, you'll find a cooperative of master growers whose legend and cultivars have been crafted for over 150 years with creativity and passion to produce some of the world's finest hops. This is NZ Hops. The industry originated in 1843, not long after the early settlers arrived from England. Years of partnership with dedicated hop breeding program and farming knowledge handed down through the generations sees the current-day master growers proudly providing 18 unique New Zealand hop varieties to the world. Visit nzhops.co.nz or find them on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at nzhops Ltd. Be sure to visit the This Week in Rauch Beer group on Facebook, as well as Twitter and Instagram. Listen to Steal This Beer every Monday, the BYO Nano podcast on the 15th of every month, and the Beer Edge podcast with Andy Crouch. Nate Schweber provides the theme music, Jeff Quinn made our logo, and remember to always defend Pilsner. I'm John Hall, recording this week from North Carolina. New episodes of this show release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.